Hello, everybody. Mike Marin and Pete Blackman here at Vermilion River Beer Company for our fourth edition of the Advantage podcast, where we talk to community leaders, business leaders, political leaders, anybody that's making things happen in the community. And I'm very excited to have our guest on with us this morning, someone that is involved in a couple of really big partnerships with Vermilion Advantage that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Somebody that's involved in a lot of things in the community. She's a member of the city council, involved helping small businesses, has some small businesses herself. So we're very excited to welcome alderwoman, small business owner, entrepreneur coach, Tricia Teague. Thanks for being on the podcast with us this morning.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. So I always like to get started by asking to tell our guests to tell a little bit about their background, their story. So please, what is the Tricia Teague story? You're from Danville,
yes,
if I'm right, but
yes.
You didn't always live here. You moved away for a while.
Yes.
So yeah, tell us that story.
Yes, born and raised here in Danville. Left when I went to college and did not officially move back. I was gone for a very long time. I think maybe 20 years, a little over 20 years. Mm-hmm. So I've still, at this point, as an adult, lived away more than I've lived here. But I've been here, been back here 13 years. Hope people aren't doing the math. And have a background. Well, I've done a lot of different things career-wise, but where I'm at now is I'm an entrepreneurship coach and educator. So certified business advisor, do a lot of things to help businesses grow. That is where my passion is. I've always been passionate about entrepreneurship. And also serving on the city council. Just was reelected to my second term. So So now I guess I'm a veteran on the city council, and just really passionate about giving back to Danville. You know, this community and the people in this community gave so much to me in helping me become the woman that I am now, and I just feel like it's my duty and obligation to come and give back. And I also want to help restore Danville to what it was, to the community that it was when I grew up. You know, I remember what Danville was like when I was a kid, and I feel like some of that has been lost over the years, and I'm hoping to be able to be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
So, I'm treading dangerous waters when I go here. When did you leave Danville?
I graduated high school in 1991.
Okay. And just because I'm curious, your background and what you're doing now is helping small business. So then what's your education? Does your education match your passion?
No.
Me neither. Go ahead.
Yes and no, actually. My undergraduate degree is in journalism. I have a master's in business administration as well.
Okay.
So postgraduate, yes.
Sure.
In corporate America, I've had lots of different jobs. I had a job that was one of the positions that I had. I worked at a legal publisher for 13 years. And one of the positions that I had there, the last position I had there was as technical product manager. So I really understood a lot about the things that make a good entrepreneur, which is doing your due diligence, understand your market, understanding the needs of your customers, understanding the problems that they have, understanding how what you're providing solves a problem for your customer. My customers, when I was in that position in technical product management, were on Wall Street. So, and they were compliance officers on Wall Street. So, you know, our solution as a company, because we serve professional people, we served accountants, we served attorneys, depending on the market, the compliance officers were different. It was still the same platform, but different content specifically for them. So I needed to be able to understand and then represent what their needs are and tailor things to them in a way that would meet their needs and solve their problems. One of the biggest things I learned once I got into that technical product management role was I remember being in a meeting, because it was a very large corporation. Our international headquarters was in Amsterdam. And I remember, and so there were lots of companies that had been bought and merged together. So I remember being in a meeting and somebody saying, well, if the customers don't understand how to use the product, then they're just, if they don't like this, they're just not using it right. Well, that is not, and it was like antithetical to everything I had heard. It was antithetical to the meetings that I had been in with the C-suite leadership who are talking about how we pivot and how we transition and how we grow as a company. It was antithetical to building from the bottom up and, remaking ourselves and making ourselves more sustainable. And I was thinking, what do you mean they don't know how to use the product? That's not an answer to the question. They're going to go someplace else.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that drove me into looking at things from an entrepreneurial perspective. I was more of an intrapreneur. I was a disruptor. So you either loved me or you hated me. So that's kind of my background. And I got into helping businesses because people who knew my corporate background would always ask me, could I help them in their business? Can you help me come up with processes? I was also a big process person. Position before I was technical product manager, I was technology liaison. And so I basically, one of the things that I did was I refined a lot of processes, because this was in the era when we were going to CD-ROM and then online and then internet. And so you'd have to take these dated and antiquated systems and then go into the new world, right? So you're going from print to online media, and how do you transition and all of those things. And these things would take us significant time. So I took processes that would take 2 weeks and I streamlined them down to like 2 days. And so I'm like, yeah, we got to get this faster, and those types of things. So, all of the things that make for a good entrepreneur, I was doing in my jobs.
Yeah.
So.
Very interesting, wonderful background, and just hearing that, I can see how it ties into what you're doing now.
Absolutely.
And so I want to get to that at some point, because that's so important to Vermilion Advantage's work and our partnership and working together on some of our big initiatives. So we'll go back to that. I do want to talk a little bit back in your history, mm-hmm. living out of the community, because I think we all had an experience outside of the community. Pete, you didn't grow up here. You grew up on the south side of Chicago. I moved away for a little bit when I went to college. I came back maybe a little sooner than you did, Tricia. But I know I love to travel. I love to get out. I love to see the outside perspective, which I think, in my opinion, is so critically important, is that we bring in some outside perspective to this
Absolutely.
Community. And look at other communities and how they are dealing with problems maybe a little more successfully at times than what we are, and how can we model ourselves after those success stories. So I want to ask you a little bit about where you lived the time that you were not in this community, and some of your experiences there, and how that, I guess, has really, focused your perspective on Danville and this community, and how has that really changed your viewpoint?
Okay. I lived in Peoria for 7 years. I went to Bradley for undergrad and stayed there for 3 more years. I worked at the Peoria Journal-Star, the newspaper there, in the sports department. Best job ever, worst pay ever.
Sports department?
Yeah, I was a sports writer.
Awesome.
Best job, worst pay. And then I moved to Lake County, and I was in Lake County for 13 years. So I lived in Waukegan, commuted to Deerfield, because that's where I worked at, in Deerfield. In Deerfield, I was it was on Lake Cook Road, so I was actually on the border of Lake County and Cook County. And our office was right next to Discover Card's office, and down the road from Walgreens. corporate headquarters. So so lots of big corporations, up there. I think, one of the things that I hear about being from this community, people talk about, the problems that we have. And the thing that I've seen is that those problems exist everywhere, right? There's blight everywhere. I'm listening to a book right now called Strong Towns. And one of the things it talks about is how neighborhoods age. And because nothing is built to last forever, right? So if you've got a neighborhood that was built in the 30s, and then you've got another neighborhood that was built in the 60s, and then you got another neighborhood that was built in the 90s, well, guess what? The neighborhood that's built in the 30s is going to age. And so you see that everywhere, in every community, in every city. It doesn't really matter. It's not a Danville thing. Every city is dealing with the same issues that we're dealing with. It's just that sometimes they're dealing with them in different ways. One of the things I think that I saw in the suburbs is that there's this continuous building and building outwards, right? One of the things that I've learned from listening to this book, Strong Towns, is, everything once upon a time used to be consolidated towards the center of the city, and everything you needed was in your neighborhood. Well, as a result of us becoming more car oriented, and things that happened after the Depression, then people started moving out. And so you had the people who had means, who were living in the city, and everything that they needed in their entire community was there. But then because of us becoming car oriented, they moved out, and they kept moving out. So then the city center becomes dilapidated because the people who had means moved out. The city center then, not only does it become dilapidated, well, first of all, it aged. Then and so then the people who moved in, it was a nice neighborhood, but they might not have been able to afford to keep it up as much. So then it goes downhill. So if you look at the city of Danville, for example, you could say, okay, well, when was this neighborhood built? And when was that neighborhood built? And what happens if you build everything at once? It all deteriorates at once. And if you're not keeping up, and if everybody's not keeping up at the same pace, and if everybody's not maintaining at the same pace, you start to see those problems. So I feel like the things that we're struggling with are not unique to Danville, are not unique to Vermilion County. They're definitely things that are resolvable, but I also think that one of the things that I saw in like Lake County, for example, is all of the outskirts are becoming less outskirts, right? So we don't have that happening here. We don't have that where it's like, oh, we'll just keep extending Danville. We can't go any further east, right? We're, another state. But, the other small towns are being built up. You can kind of look at Champaign County and see that, right? Well, you see more building happening in St. Joe. You see more building happening in west of Champaign. And it's because things that are happening are the same things that are happening in Chicagoland. So I don't know if that answered the question, but...
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's a good perspective, especially the fact that what you say, I think, really resonates, that every community, every county has the same issues that we have. You take, for instance, Champaign County. They've got just as serious of issues that we experience here, maybe even more so.
Even more, absolutely.
Some cases.
Yep.
It's masked over because they've got the economic engine over there that anybody would kill for. That's just not a reality in not only Vermilion County, but in almost every other county in the state. So, I think it's very relevant, and it's definitely a good perspective.
I interviewed to be the downtown development director for Waukegan, and here you are going through Lake County, and it's amazing. And then you find this town that's really struggling in the middle of Lake County, and that was Waukegan. And so. Yeah, you can find it everywhere.
Absolutely, and very, very similar, right? Like like the Genesee Theater in Waukegan was the Fisher, It's the same situation. They have a really old theater that they were just like bringing back and starting to have shows, but for years it had been shut down. The college had a campus downtown like nobody was using. Now, there were some things that were downtown Waukegan that we don't have, right? Because I used to live like walking distance from downtown Waukegan. I owned a house that was walking like right near the lake. They have mass transit. So there's a metro station within walking distance of downtown Waukegan. But there's lots of things that were happening. Their newspapers shrank and was bought out. And then all of the things that are happening, you see things that are happening. Because what's happening is what people think, if you just look at where you live, you think it's only happening in your city. There are things that are happening in industries, and those industries are everywhere. So the same situations are happening because they're happening across industries. But people don't see that because they're only looking at their specific location. Yep.
Certainly. I think that perspective is very helpful, especially when you deal with issues on the city council. And so staying on that blight issue, because it's such an important issue to me, having originally tried to start the Vermilion County Land Bank, which morphed into a much larger entity, and now Vermilion Advantage has taken on the county trustee program in an effort to start combating blight. I think blight is a really good example, but on a lot of these issues, we've got the power, we've got the ability to fix these issues, or at least make great headway in these issues. It's just a matter whether we have the will or not to invest the money and the willpower to get this done. And so I bring that up because, I think I should say congratulations or maybe condolences on your reelection to the city council, however you want to look at it. But, definitely you face some serious issues. And I think that's one of them that we've made some headway on that issue, certainly, but there's a lot more work to be done on the blight issue as well as several issues. If we're really going to progress and if we're really going to be able to sell Danville and Vermilion County to people as a place to come and live and work and recreate.
Well, my opinion on the blight issues, first of all, blight is definitely a problem, right? Because you have a city that I believe we're approaching our 200th year in a couple of years. So there's a lot of infrastructure here that obviously has been working beyond its, has extended its time. So we have to approach the blight. We have to deal with it. However, my opinion is, I've said this publicly and I'll continue to say this publicly, we can't just look at blight by itself. We can't just say, these houses are dilapidated and we're going to knock them down, or we're going to acquire them so that we can knock them down so that we can eliminate blight. There's two reasons I'm saying that. Because one, what it does is it actually decreases our income. You can't run anything if you keep decreasing your income. When you look at your tax bill, the land is not the most valuable part. It's the structure. So if you knock down a structure and you take it to land, then what do? You just decrease the value of that property. So the only way for that property to actually then become valuable again is if a structure is built on that property. The other thing that happens is when the city acquires it, it takes it off the tax roll, period, because the city isn't paying property taxes, which means now you've also eliminated income even more. You not only did you decrease the value of the property, now you also eliminated the income. The city is not a landlord. The city is not in real estate. So the city should not be hoarding all of these properties. The only way to grow the city and the only way to make the city better is to implement some sort of programs that would encourage building on those properties, that the city owns, so that we can actually have continue to have viable housing in our city. So, blight is a problem, yes, But but reducing blight is not a solution to the problem. It is a Band-Aid on an issue that is part of a bigger problem. So you can't say, for example, if you think about it in terms of health, like physical health of a person's body, if a person is diabetic and they have a sore that develops and it won't heal, you can't keep putting a bandage on it and think that that's going to make the situation better, because you got to deal with the root. And the root in that particular example would be diabetes. And if you don't deal with your blood sugar, then you're going to always have sores that never heal, because all you keep doing is putting Band-Aids. And I feel like what we're doing with knocking down houses is just continuing to put Band-Aids without actually dealing with the real problem, with the source of the problem, because the source of the problem is not the blight. The source of the problem is way bigger than just the blight.
I love that you bring up that issue. And the reason why is because I think one of the big challenges that we face, just from a practical standpoint, not even going down to the philosophical argument of when you knock down housing, should you replace it? It's the fact that when we're marketing ourselves to try to get people to come into our community, there is a lack of housing, and it's across the spectrum from people of lower income means all the way up to high-end housing. We just don't have the housing to be able to market to people to say, hey, come live in Danville. It's a challenge. And if I had $1 for every time that one of our members went and recruited somebody in their workforce, be it just a person out on the floor all the way up to a high-level executive, and that person's living in Champaign, they're living in Covington, wherever, they're living outside of this community. And one of the main reasons why is because the housing stock just doesn't exist. The place where that person wants to live, the house that they want to live in, is not here on the market and readily available.
Absolutely.
And so I think from our advocacy committee standpoint that we just brought on board at Vermilion Advantage, that's one issue that we're looking to tackle, really engaging some developers and people that are willing to invest in this community to say, hey, what kind of incentive package do we need to put on the table to get you to want to build housing? And I know that that's a tricky issue right now, especially with inflationary pressures and some macroeconomic stuff that just doesn't make it easy to build. But that's an issue we really got to tackle. So sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox.
Before you came back, and this was right at the, start of the century, if you think about that phrase. We'd actually taken a page off of Rock Island's development handbook, and we started what was called the Renaissance Initiative. It's a ghost of an effort. It's not even an effort. The concept was to go into, so at the time I was a downtown development director. I was with DDI. And the concept came up that, as much as you want to develop the commercial downtown, the neighborhood will impact that adversely if you're not paying attention and you're not taking care of it. So the idea was to go into the West Downtown neighborhood, and we created what was called the Renaissance Initiative, which would essentially go in and start investing and remodeling and then selling houses at a loss, right? So the idea was we'd acquire a house for as little as we could get it. We'd put a cap on how much money we were going to put into it, and then we would sell it at less than that. We would actually take a loss, with the concept being that we would take less and less and less of a loss in an effort to sort of kickstart the private market, right? And so once you get enough done, the private market starts taking over. I still think it was a great concept, unfortunately, and the city really got behind it. And then that was the year I think Lowe's projected revenues were like in the tank, completely way off. And so the city had to cut where they had to, and that initiative lost basically. And so we never really, that initiative went away just because it was never fully realized or never fully funded. But But to us, that was the idea, was to not, and that was going to fill in a housing gap, right? It was that sort of housing between 50 to 125,000 at the time, I think, or maybe even less, which we had zero stock of. And nobody could build it for that. You couldn't build a house and turn around and sell it. The only way to do it was to redevelop. I'm still a big believer in that, to the point where I think we were one of the pioneers, and you see where that's gone. So, but I totally agree with you. I feel like if you're just focused on fixing potholes, you're going to be fixing potholes forever and doing nothing else. So it's a very refreshing perspective to hear that.
It is, one of the things that I pride myself in doing is looking at what's working in other areas, getting an understanding of the analysis that has been done by other people, looking at the data, understanding where we are similar and where we are different than other communities, so that we can learn from and glean from the things that people have done well, but also learn from and glean from the things that they didn't do well, so that we don't make the same mistakes. So, it sounds like that initiative, timing-wise, probably was bad. Just the economy. It's almost like the people who started their businesses in February of 2020, right? Same thing. Like, oh yeah, it was great until the world happened. And so, sounds like that might have been around the time that the economy tanked. When we had a recession hit us. But yeah, there's tons of things out there that other people are doing in other places that could work here. It just takes some initiative to make those things work. Now, there are things that we're doing that do work. Like I remember when I first moved back here. I don't know I don't think it was when I first moved back, but I know it was after I started paying attention and I was here. Like, we had unspent CDBG dollars. Now we are aggressively using our CDBG funds to help homeowners, rehabilitate their homes. And then we also we're aggressively, pursuing grants to help homeowners rehabilitate homes. So we also have, in the city of Danville, some IDA grants that helps homeowners as well. So it doubles our efforts. So you have, we got the CDBG group, we got the IDA group. We were so aggressive in doing it. We're one of the few communities who actually used up all of our IDA dollars and actually got more money. That doesn't happen in the grant world. It happens because you've done a good job. So our community development group has done an exceptional job of getting those dollars spent. I think it's a step in the right direction. It's just a matter of doing more of those things, finding more of those things to do development, and definitely being targeting in the efforts that we make. However, I do think one of the things that we still haven't done a good job of is understanding the needs of the community and what it would take and to grow. So if you look at generationally, the millennials and younger are not buying houses. They don't want to buy houses. So that means we need more rental properties. We have a rental problem, which is a hot button issue right now because the rental registration ordinance has been rewritten twice. It was rewritten last year. It's in the process of being rewritten again now. We've been in the conversations about that at City Council since last fall. And it just was on the agenda this past week, and it got tabled for another fix that hopefully will come up next month. So it's a big issue. When you're a young person right out of college, because that's what you want, right? You don't want to attract people who are aging out. You want to attract the youngest population that you can get so that they will come and stay here. My parents moved to Danville when they were, how were they? 22, yes, 22 and 20. They were newlyweds. My mother still lives in the same house that they bought back in I think they bought the house in 1975. Wow. But they were newlyweds. Now, where did they live when they first moved here? They lived in an apartment, which is what most young people want, even more so now. My parents bought a house in 1975. They were 25 and 23. But there are people who are in their 30s and 40s. They're waiting to buy houses until later, which means we have to have other types of housing. We are a house-heavy community. Well, guess what? If you go west, they're not, because it's a college town. So because it's a college town, a person who's graduating college, they don't want a house. They can't afford a house. They don't need a house, and they can't maintain a house. I want to be in an apartment. It's low maintenance. There's other people around. I feel safer, all of those things. What options do we have here? Not very many. So our community is not built for young people to come move in and then want to have their lives evolve and change and grow. Our community isn't built for that. It's built for families. And we're not going to attract younger people who are going to they're the ones who can bring their corporate jobs that could work from anywhere. They could live anywhere if we actually had a place for them to live. We don't. We have very few places for them to live. There's two young people in my family. I have a niece that just graduated from, my niece and my nephew both graduated college last year. My niece graduated from graduate school. My nephew graduated from undergrad. They're both here. They both went back to their parents' house. My nephew has been looking for a place to live. I don't even know how long it's been. He just got an apartment. He just got the keys 2 days ago. But it's been a process. At one point, he was looking to buy just because the rental market was so bad. But it's not because he was wanting to buy a house. It was just because I don't want to rent. You hear all the horror stories about landlords in Danville. Nobody wants to deal with that. There's not that many apartments available. So what do? He just got lucky and the timing was right that he found a good place, and finally found an apartment. But it's a very, very, very bad situation. And I know of many people with means who have done exactly what you said. I've come to Danville trying to find a place in Danville. I can't find a place in Danville, so I'll go live someplace else and commute to Danville. And we have lots of commuters because I had a short corporate stint here. I worked at Heister Yale as an analyst. Tons of people are commuting in Danville every single day and living elsewhere. This is a very inexpensive community to live in. One of the reasons why I came back home, because at the time I was working from home. This is before working from home was in vogue. And I did the math, and I was like, oh, this is the equivalent of a $20,000 raise just by relocating and going back home.
Wow. That's an interesting fact, by the way. That's a fact that should be talked about more, is translating that into a salary concept.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I did all of the math on cost of living. Mind you, at the time, I wasn't commuting anymore. I was working from home.
The amazing thing is, I think this is where we got to get creative and figure out exactly. Maybe it's going back and look at, other efforts like the effort you had, and trying to figure out how to. I think we got to marry the incentive package for developers with also a plan to sell them to say that, hey, this is a viable plan to market our community. And I think that's where maybe we're falling down. Because you've got guys like, for instance, Rick Elkin, Heartland Properties, that have done a really good job of taking some of the apartment complexes we've had and really updating them and putting money into them and making them into quality options. But, Rick primarily caters to the corporate world into employees and working with those partners. And so it's a little bit of when you're an investor, a developer, it's a little bit of a risk. It's a big risk to actually go outside of that comfort zone of, hey, I've got my target market and this works well. We're really going to put ourselves out there and invest in, say, downtown apartment housing to try to attract a group of people that at this point we've not been successful at getting. So in order for somebody in that situation to put themselves out there and to invest that money, they've got to be confident that, on the government side, on the economic development side, we're going to back you up we're going to give you these incentives. The concerted effort is going to be there to attract these people to come into the community. And so I think that's what we really got to do, because I do think we've got some really good business people, some really good investors, really good people that have the best interests of the community at heart, that they're willing to put their money where their mouth is. They're willing to get in the game. Right now, the risk is just a little too high for them. That the costs don't work out with inflation. The numbers don't work. And then B, they have to be confident that we're going to support them with that marketing campaign or whatever it is to really attract those people into our community.
Well, I'm going to add to that, our only targets can't be the large developers, right? Mm-hmm. If you had, I know, for example, that in downtown we have some incentive programs to, if you rehabilitate the apartment above your storefront business, that there's DDI funds or incentives or whatever to do that. However, I'm also one of those people who says, well, if something isn't working, then we might need to do something else. Mm-hmm. So we've had this program for how long? How many people have actually taken advantage of it? Mm-hmm. If people aren't taking advantage of it, then there's a reason why. We can't just say, we have this program and nobody's taking advantage of it, and mm-hmm. That's not going to work. Mm-hmm. Because one of the being entrepreneurial in your approach and how you look at things is, okay, if this isn't working, why isn't it working? Let's fix it. Let's tweak it. That's how you make things better. And if there's a piece that's missing, well, if you've got a wheel, if you got a car and it's got 4 wheels on it, but one of those wheels is underinflated, then guess what? It's not really going to be effective. And you got to actually if we just make this one little change, then everything will actually run smoother. And that's what we might need to do, is look at the programs that we have to figure out why it's not working. It could be a good program that has a piece where it's yes, it would work, but the paperwork is way too hard. Or it would work, but the incentive is not high enough. For example, one of the things that I found out yesterday, one of the things that the state did recently, this is in a different lane, but I'm just using it as an example. They have made adjustments on indirect costs on grants. Well, let's look at TIF, for example, and say, well, if the TIF dollar amount is $50,000, is that enough given the inflationary pressures? Should it be more? Should it be $70,000 or $75,000? I don't know if that's the answer. I'm just throwing that out there as an example, right? That maybe it would work because it was implemented. The number we came up with years ago, and costs have changed since then. And maybe that $50,000 is nothing now. There's also other things that are working other places that I've been looking at. I have a list. So one of them is residential TIF. And I've been thinking about that, okay, how would this play out? And I haven't really dug into it yet, but it's something that's on my radar now. So I'm how could we make this work? But I could see it making a difference, especially in areas of town where the taxes are higher because it's high pockets of rental properties, right? Because if you take out the homeowner's exemption, then the person is paying more tax. Well, if that money actually went back into the neighborhood so that people who actually own in those neighborhoods could actually use those dollars to rehabilitate their homes, then that actually might make a difference, especially for somebody who's been, like my mother, who's been in her home since 1975. So we're talking about 40 years. I had to think through the math. Oh, close to 50 years. Close to 50 years. And, well, if she needs a new roof on her house and she's retired now, but she owns that house, and she has equity in that house, but she's also collected Social Security. So she can't necessarily afford to go out and get a loan to put a new roof on her house. But if we actually did use residential TIF, maybe she could. And that's just another program that we could put in place in certain neighborhoods where you have large pockets of homeowners versus renters, but the renters are starting to outweigh the homeowners. Because there's so much tax dollars coming from all of these rental properties, that maybe that could work. And I don't know if that's the answer, because again, I haven't dug into residential TIF yet. I'm just kind of playing around in my head, but I could see that possibly working. So I think there are lots of things we could do. It's just a matter of finding the right mixture of things and have it be a good mixture, and not just from a developer perspective, but from a individual resident or individual entrepreneur perspective. Because one of the things that I've seen in the economic development books that I've read and in the conferences that I've been to is that if you're going to actually do development, it starts at home. You have to, this is me kind of going into my sphere, which is entrepreneurship. You got to be able to create an ecosystem for that development. One of the things that attracts people to a community is the amenities of the community. Having a walkable community. Our community is not walkable at all. What things are happening downtown? What things are we doing to market certain things in our community? We don't market our community well enough, but we also don't have a lot of activities that younger people are looking for. They're going to go someplace else where those activities are closer. I have a very close friend who we also have done business together. They recently relocated. They looked to come to Danville. They tried to buy in Danville. They ended up moving to Urbana. She loves it in Urbana. She's like, everything is nearby. I can walk to certain places. I have young children now. I can take them to this park and that park and do all of the things. And she came from Chicago. She's lived everywhere. She's lived in Africa. She's lived in Colorado. She's lived in Wisconsin. She's lived some of everywhere. So there's specific amenities that they're looking for. And a lot of those amenities we don't have here. So we have to have those things in place too, because if you're doing an apples to apples comparison, in most people's lists, Danville is not crossing off a lot of things for people or checking a lot of boxes. The biggest box that Danville does check is cost of living. It's less expensive to live here than other places. But the other boxes that we need to be checking, we're not. And until we address multiple things at once, we're going to continue to be where we are right now, which is we're only attracting certain people, and we're losing a lot of good people because we're not checking enough of those boxes.
One of the things that I love about this conversation, and I mean we're liable to rattle a few people here by having this conversation, but this is what I love, and this is the purpose of this podcast, is the fact that I feel very passionately and very strongly, and I've taken some blowback from some people and some people on my board about some things that I put out there recently about, I think we need to have an honest conversation about this community and where we're at. And it's a wonderful community, and I say every time, this is the most wonderful place on earth, and I want to say it every time because I believe that in my heart of hearts. But we've got to have an honest conversation about where we're at, what we lack, the things that we have to address, and we've got to start addressing them. We've got to have the willpower to do that. And, to our political leaders that don't want to have this conversation, I would say this: it's not bad to admit that we're not where we want to be, but we damn sure better be headed in the right direction.
And we have to say these are the things that we're doing to address the deficiencies, so that people know that we're actually making progress and that we're actually doing the work. But we also have to actually be doing the work. Right? So there's tons of things that we're doing to address deficiencies. There's tons of good things to say about Danville on top of cost of living, right? So me coming home was, okay, this is the equivalent of a $20,000 raise, because taxes in Lake County are not cheap. Cost of living in Lake County was not cheap. So I'm like, okay, yes, I could be close to my family and I can go home. I was in the process of coming home with my work from home job, and then I got reorganized out of a job, but I came home anyway. So I was like, yeah, I could have Chicago money living in Danville. This would be great. When I got here and started doing work, because the first thing I did when I got here, I started a black newspaper, the Progressive Black News. One of the things that I found about being here is that it's very, very easy to get connected in Danville, and we are extremely supportive. When you meet somebody, whether it's, I come to your office and I have a new business, or I'm planning to start a business, and I need a resource. I know I can go to Vermillion Advantage and you say, hey, you're looking for office space. Well, here's some options for you. Because that's what happened with me. Let me connect you with so-and-so. You need to meet this person. You don't have that happen in other places. That happens in Danville all the time. It's very, very easy to get connected, to be in the know, to be involved, to get into things. And so if you're trying to grow your business, to me, it is, I'm not going to say easier, because growing a business isn't easy. But it's, I think, a little bit more straightforward in terms of how you approach it in Danville, because of the interconnections and the interconnectivity. Danville is very, very supportive of Danville things. You can see the entire city come out. Like, let's say somebody was on, I remember when Christian Cunningham was on national TV on the Teen Voice, and when he came back home, and it was like the entire city was out here. I remember, so things like that, you don't necessarily see those things in bigger cities, but you see that here. We support our own. So there's tons of things that I think we can talk about that are good, and we do have to be honest about the things that are not so good, but we have to talk about them in a way that says, yes, I know this is not good, and these are the things that we're doing to address those things, because we have to promote the things that we do. Before we sat down, I was on Facebook. Somebody asked the question of how can I get help to rehabilitate my home? And I was like, the city. Contact the city. And then, how do I do that? And I was like, here's the link to the city's page. Here's the department you need to contact. Ask about these specific programs. People don't know about these things. So one of the things that we do poorly is promoting all of the good things that we do have. People don't know about the IDA, the CDBG program. The IDA program is different because people applied and that list is full. But people don't know about the CDBG programs. So you have elderly people who've been in houses for years, maybe even inherited houses, right? They might be second or third generation in their house. And, I would love it if, I'll go ahead and say it. I would love it if code inspectors, when they're going around, right, and they're looking at houses and they see a house that, like, the roof looks like it's aged. Let me look up and see if this is a rental property or not, right? It's not. It's homeowners. Well, you know what? Maybe this person, we should contact this person and tell them, hey, we got X program and you might want to apply. Because what happens if we don't? If we don't, and the roof never gets fixed, guess what happens next?
Problem.
You got a problem. Now you got a house with a hole in the roof, and then you have, okay, well, you know what? You can't live there anymore. You move out. And then what happens? It becomes an abandoned house. And then what happens? It becomes the city's problem. So we got to look ahead. We got to say, okay, let's look ahead. If we don't do this now, 5 steps ahead, this is what could possibly happen. So how can we mitigate those things from happening? Again, it goes back to, are you dealing with the problem? Or are you putting a Band-Aid on the problem? There are plenty of houses that I'm looking at. I'm driving around town going, I need to see who owns this house. Is this on the, I'm asking, the city has a problems properties list. Nobody knows that. Is this on the problem properties list? Who owns this house? Are we trying to get this house? Is it, is it going to the trustee? Or have we reached out to the homeowner? What are we doing? There's houses that I drive by every day. There is one house. I can tell you exactly where it's at. I don't remember the address off the top of my head, but I drive by it every day because it's on Fairchild Street. And I'm like, okay, eventually this house is going to be on the problem properties list. There's a hole developing. Okay, I see where the gutter has fallen off, and yep, there's a hole developing, and it's been empty for years. Eventually it's going to have to get torn down. But it wasn't like that 3 years ago.
So you're suggesting that code enforcement be
Proactive.
almost ambassadors?
I would love that. I don't know if that's possible. I mean, I know code enforcement is very busy doing their jobs, right? One of the things that came up at City Council this week from one of the landlords was, in 2023 we had 32 citations, and last year we had 300 something, right? So obviously code enforcement is actually enforcing codes that are on the books, which haven't always been enforced. One of the issues that we have as it relates to blight is making sure we actually enforce the stuff that we've got to make our city better. So I know that they're busy. I don't know if it's possible. It's just a thought that was in my head. Now, there might be another way of doing that. There might be, okay, well, maybe one day a week they make a list of houses and then somebody goes, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. It's just, but it's definitely some proactivity needs to happen at the city.
A couple things. I will tell you one thing, and again, years and years ago, I had somebody at the city refer to the code enforcement as a source of revenue. And it was just incensing to think of that because that's not a revenue stream. It's not supposed to be. Anyway.
Right.
But, in our neighborhood, we're actually in the enterprise zone, right? Which means that when we go to do improvements on the house, the materials are sales tax exempt. But 90% of the people that live in that neighborhood have no idea of that.
Right.
They just don't know.
And therein lies part of the issue, because we don't tell people about the things that are out there. People don't know.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, there's what? How do I do that? I didn't know anything about that. Well, and there's plenty of other examples. I mean, things that aren't even things that are about improvement, right? This time last year, there was a fire that resulted in a death. It was the first one since I had become an alderman. And I remember emailing the chief saying, there was a fire that resulted in a death, and it was found that there was no working smoke detector. So I emailed the chief saying, hey, this is really unfortunate. Is there something that we can do about this? And they're like, yeah, we have a smoke detector program. Oh, great. Can we make sure that people are aware that we have a smoke detector program? Because this saves a life. Multiple lives. It could save a life. And there was a series of conversations over email where somebody said, well, and it wasn't somebody in the fire department, who said, well, we don't want to, they might run out of those, so we can't push it too much. Well, what is a life worth? What is a life actually worth?
Yeah.
I'm okay with running out of smoke detectors and then having to wait for more to come.
What are they there for, right? I mean, that's...
You know, what?
We've got one left. We don't want to give it away. Yeah.
Because we can actually save lives. Like, what is it that we're doing here? And I think that what we should be doing, and I'm hoping that, especially, and I'm looking at this through the lens of as an elected official, I'm hoping that all of us as elected officials specifically, and I know you used to be one, are looking at things going, I want to make sure that I make the quality of life better for the people that are here. Everything that we're doing, everything that we're talking about is all about making lives better. And if we're not doing things to make lives better, then why are we doing them?
Absolutely. These are the conversations that we have to have. And the thing that I love about it is they're ideas, right? Mm-hmm. You even admit maybe this is not the solution, maybe there's some reason why we can't do these things, but they're ideas. They're a place to start the conversation of how do we make people's lives better. Absolutely.
And you have to have the conversation, and it can't just be internal. It can't just be a conversation in your head. Because you have to talk things out to be able to understand where the holes are, where the gaps are, and that's how ideas become better. That's how solutions become realized, because things happen when people come together. I'm a Christian. The Bible says that iron sharpens iron. So you have to be able to say, okay, you know what? I'm good by myself, but I'm better when I'm equally yoked with somebody else who can come and help me craft this thing and make this thing go to another level and to a higher level. I personally like to talk things out and talk things through with other people, even on my team, just to make sure that I don't see that, that I don't miss anything, that there are not gaps that I see. There's tons of things that I know that I brought up, and I think one of the things, I don't know if this is a me thing or a people in general thing. I see things 5 steps ahead. I can say, well, if we make this move back here, this is going to be the impact this many months, weeks, years later. So I'm thinking ahead all the time, and I've made suggestions at the city where we've done that. So I'll give you another example. I remember when we started talking about we're going to enforce the ordinance on toters and getting your toter off the curb, within a day of your garbage. And we started talking about, and also if your toter was in bad condition, we were gonna, if you didn't have a lid, you're gonna get a tag, and all of the things. And I said, okay, well, shouldn't we let people know that we're going to do this, and maybe we should also let people know that you can actually come and get a replacement toter. And that's a good idea. And then I was like, you might want to order some extra toters. And they were like, and the response was, why? And I was like, because you just told people that you're about to start enforcing the toter ordinance, and you just told people that they can come get, replacement toters, and the people who are responsible are gonna actually do that.
Yeah.
So if you don't have extras, and come on, how long does it take them to get here? 6 months. Then maybe you want to order a second truckload or whatever, because you're gonna run out. It's a trickle down. It's I'm at step 1, but it's understanding what step 6 is.
Sure.
And it's one of those things that I thought everybody did, but I guess not, because I see more and more of it where it's like, well, you didn't know that if you did this back here, that was going to be the result?
Yeah. there's resources out there that we just don't talk about, and I don't know that it's ill-willed. It's just it's
we're just not thinking through.
Just not thinking through talking about it, like
Yep.
presenting people with those options. To,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And to me, that's also part of entrepreneurship. Like, because I do that in my business, and I tell other business owners to do this. Like, okay, you know what? Yeah, you think you're just going to go start selling stuff, and if you don't have a process in place, you're going to get overwhelmed. And I've seen it happen. I just had this conversation with my team this week. We have a process, and I was like, "Oh, if this ain't working, we're gonna fix it." Because we don't do broken processes around here. And I could tell you and I was like, and if we don't fix it, when we open the floodgates, it's gonna get worse, and it's gonna overwhelm us. I don't want to put us in that situation. We have to fix it now while it's small. We got to test it to make sure it works, and then we're prepared for what happens next. That's how you take any enterprise, business, municipal, whatever, and have it be effective and efficient. Because at the end of the day, the city, any government organization, is still a business. And it has to be run that way. And if we're not running it that way, then, we're not going to get the results that we expect to get.
I love this conversation, and I think we could talk all day long about issues, and I know we've gone on for a while now, and so maybe we might have to have you back or break this up into two different segments. I think this is the longest one we're probably running.
I'll tell you what, I have so many things to say, but I've just been enthralled listening.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I do. Before we wrap up today, we got to get to what I think your real passion is.
Yes.
And so, talk a little bit about the Trep School, Soar Space, and then your partnership with Vermilion Advantage on a couple of big initiatives.
Okay. So the Trep School exists to educate and coach entrepreneurs in getting their businesses going and getting them growing. That is what we do at the Trep School. It is a thing I live for. I love to do. Before I started listening to books on government and economic development, I was basically just living, eating, sleeping, breathing entrepreneurship all the time. So we've had some programs. We have some things that we're about to relaunch, and things that we already have in place right now. Our flagship program is the Trep on Track Business Bootcamp. We did it for 3 years for free, offering sponsored services through grant from ICJA, the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority, through their R3 program. Every time I have to think about it, I can never come with what the R's are. Restore, renew, but there's one in the middle. Maybe reinvigorate. I don't think that's right. Reinvest. Restore, reinvest, renew. With the R3 program, which basically takes cannabis tax dollars and reinvests them in the communities hardest hit by the war on drugs. Danville is one of those communities. So the Trep on Track Business Bootcamp, it's a program where we provide entrepreneurship education and coaching to entrepreneurs. It's a 6-month program. There are 2 curricula. The first curriculum provides insight into entrepreneurial mindset, which is really about not any specific individual business idea, but just what does it take to be successful as an entrepreneur. So really giving you the mindset that you need for sustainability. It is coupled with a tool we use called the Opportunity Discovery Canvas, which helps people look at their business from the perspective of the problem that it solves for their customer, and really understanding and really getting next to the customer and at the root of what their thoughts and feelings are about their problem. So then we have an advanced course that's like a mini MBA. And then we provide the entrepreneurs the opportunity to have coaching. They would get 12 one-on-one coaching sessions. And then because we had grant funding, we also gave them capital. Because there's pillars to entrepreneurial development and ecosystem building. And one of the biggest ones is capital. Education is great, but if you don't actually have capital to do anything with the education, then you're kind of still stuck. So we provided our graduates with $3,000 that we would purchase in goods and services for them to use in their business. And then we also had a pitch contest where we provided $10,000 to the prize winners. So altogether, a person won the pitch contest and participated in class, they could have $8,000 in total because the winner of the pitch contest got $5,000, which helped people really take off. And so we did that for 3 years. It was great. That grant ended, so we kind of sunset the Trep on Track for a little bit while we were waiting to see what was going to happen, with the grant, and if there was going to be a reapplication period and if we were going to win it again and whatnot. But we've had such demand. I've had people walk in saying, "I want to be in your class." Well, can I pay to be in your class? So we're like, okay, yes. If you want to pay to be in our class, yes, we will provide an option for that. So in probably less than a month, we'll be launching Trep on Track again as a paid option. And we will have multiple options for people. Mm-hmm. So that way, depending on where you are, if you want to be in a class setting where you are in a live class, even if you're not physically present here, because I had phone calls from Atlanta, I had phone calls from Nashville, then we will be able to make that available to you. We will have a hybrid class where we will be in person and virtual at the same time. I've always done coaching virtually, so that's nothing, that part is not new. So we will have coaching available that way as well. We'll do some mastermind groups for people who can't afford to have one-on-one coaching but want to still have support. We'll have some online communities, so then that way you can then have even Q&A. And then we'll have a self-paced option. So that's the part that we're building now, where our curriculum will be available online and people can go through it themselves at their own pace whenever they're ready to get started. And so it'll also make it a lot actually more affordable for them. So wherever you are, they'll have that option. And we'll even be offering afterpay, so then that way if you want to decide, well, I can't I want I'll call it the Cadillac, I always call it the Cadillac. I want the Cadillac, but I can't afford to pay it all at once. Then a person could, break that payment down however they want to using some afterpay solution. So we have that. I'm excited about launching that because I love Trep on Track. I love the impact of Trep on Track, really. Then we have some stuff that we're doing with Vermillion Advantage. We have the Economic Empowerment Center, which is funded through DCEO Office of, they changed their name, so I always screw it up. It used to be the OME office, but now it's the OE3 office, Office of Economic Equity and Empowerment or something like that. And so we got a 2-year grant for the EEC. Our programming is about to start. We're going to do some things that we don't do in Trep on Track, to be quite honest, because I felt like Trep on Track does a lot of great things, but once a person gets started, there's still some support that is needed and questions that people have in specific places. So one of the things that we're doing is a Money Smart for Smart Business. We partner with Old National Bank, and they're going to have their education team come in from their headquarters in Indianapolis and do the education for that series, because it has to be a Money Smart partner, and most of those are banks. So Money Smart for Small Business is one of the courses that we're offering, but I'm always in conversations with people about different things, and when I hear about things, I'm like, okay, great, yes, I'm going to be the person that brings this to all of our entrepreneurs. So one of the, just yesterday, I was on a call with someone from DCEO talking about a grant opportunity, not a grant, I'm sorry, it's not a grant, it's an incentive, the EDGE incentive, which is about businesses in Illinois creating jobs. And it provides a tax incentive on the payroll taxes. And you have up to you identify the number of employees you might hire in the next 2 years. You have 2 years to hire them. You get 10 years of incentives basically to retain the payroll taxes. a percentage of the payroll taxes, not all of it. But still, it's a help, especially when you're a small business and you're wanting to grow. So I'm like, oh, can you, like, this is great. I plan to use it. Can you do a workshop on this? Yes, great. So I got to put that on the schedule. So I'm always looking for things that we're putting on the schedule for the EEC. The EEC will also do some business assessments. So we have a tool that we use where it gives a business owner the opportunity to do a 360-degree assessment on their business, no matter where they are, and then come up with, we'll follow that up with some one-on-ones so that we can then help them determine where they want to focus and then determine then the actions that they want to take based on the focus areas. And then there are tools that actually help you with that process. So that's going to be part of the EEC. There's some other stuff that we've looked at doing with the EEC as well. So we've got those programs. And then we have another program, also state funded, that we're looking at how we can help businesses streamline their processes through the use of technology. So I'll give you an example. This is a really good one. I own 2 houses here in Danville. So I have the house I live in, and I have a house that I bought as an investment property way back in 2007. And I had a plumber come to my house. He's somebody I've known for years, and he's old school. So he, when he bills me, he has a person in his office who sends out an invoice, and it sends me a bill, and old school way. Well, I have another house here that had some drainage issues or something, and we called a plumbing company to deal with those. And I was in Chicago at the time. I was living here, but I happened to be in Chicago that day. And they were like, yeah, we worked on the issues, and I'm going to send you a link. And so he sent me a link, he sent me the screen of the camera and the scope and everything, and then he sent me the link to pay. And I was sitting at a stoplight on Lakeshore Drive, and I opened my phone and I clicked the link, and I went to Apple Pay and I double-clicked, pay, done, and the light hadn't even turned green yet. And I was like, now that's efficient and that's effective. And he's using technology to streamline his business. And I use technology to streamline mine. And I'm like, there's a lot of our small business owners who don't know the things that can help them scale and be more efficient and effective in their business because they're not using technology. So we have another program that we're going to be doing website assessments and then also process assessments and everything to say, okay, what are you doing now and what can we help you streamline? And then what technology we can put in place. And then there's also some Grow with Google curricula that's free that we will be able to help them, use that too to be able to say, for example, are you on Google Maps? Because that's how people find things now, right? So are you on Google Maps? Let's make sure you got your Google business profile. Even if you don't have a physical address, you can still, if you have a service-based business and you want to make sure that people know your coverage area, that can be on Google Maps too. And not just Google Maps, but we also need to be on Apple Maps because a lot of people use Apple products and it's not the same map. And if you're in one and not the other, you could be losing out on a lot of people. So those types of things, we're going to help them with that. So that's just some of the programming at the Trep School. I got a long list of things that we're developing because my brain never turns off. So we're looking at grants as a service because that's been a conversation. I've had phone calls from people, one of them sitting at that table, you.
Guilty.
Yes, on how can you help us with grants, because I kind of have mastered this whole grant thing. I've never written a grant that I didn't win. That writer background comes into play, but the meticulous technology liaison and the product development, product manager piece comes into play too. So all those skill sets I have definitely helped me succeed in this grant world. So I want to be able to help other people in that way. And then we have Soar Space Business Center, which is a co-working space where we provide a space for entrepreneurs to be able to come and work and grow. And not just entrepreneurs, but people who work from home. Because one of my regulars is not an entrepreneur. He is an insurance adjuster. He's in there at least twice a week. That is his home base. And we provide offices, we provide desks, we provide tables, we provide workshop space, we provide space. We provide virtual mail services. So if you have a business where you don't want to have your home address be your business address, we provide address for that. We are a certified mail receiving agency. So we can be the address where we receive your mail. We even have, we partner with some online services where we have people who aren't even physically present here. Well, we can receive their mail, ship them their mail. We can take pictures of their mail, send them, and they can say, okay, they can respond online and say, oh, shred this, and we'll shred it. So it is everything that you want to do to be able to scale up, we do that. And part of the reason why I opened Soar Space is because I used to be that person on multiple veins. I was a person who worked from home, who would be in Danville and not have a place to work. Back when people didn't have internet at home, so I would be, and as a technical product manager, I'm doing releases. It's a holiday weekend, and it's like, yeah, we're going to do the release this weekend, and now we got to all get online on Saturday morning to talk about the release that happened last night, to make sure everything went okay, and to review everything and determine if we're going to back it out or not. So I would be a rolled donut, or I'd be in a parking lot at McDonald's trying to find some internet, because this was in the early 2000s. This is not 2020 anything, not even 20 teens. This is way back when. And it was hard. And so being able to have, like, we have fiber on purpose because we want high speed. So being able to have a place to go and work. And then when I moved back here and started my business, then like, okay, I need to have a place to meet with people, and I don't want them to come to my house. Well, what options do I have? The only option really that there was, it was go to a restaurant or coffee shop or go to the library. Neither of which was conducive to what I was doing. Or I would go to their business. But if they didn't have a business, then what are we doing? And so when I went to get my first office, I remember my first commercial lease was 3 years. I'm a single person business at that time. A solopreneur doesn't know what's going to happen in 3 years. That's a big risk. And then once I get there, now I got to pay for internet, and I got to pay for all of these things. Well, I just really want to show up with my laptop, because that's all I really need. So that's what Soar Space provides. And if you want to have an office, you can. We have offices. We provide the desk, we provide the chair, you show up with your laptop. And wherever you are, whether you want private space, and we also have meeting rooms, we have conference rooms. We're expanding. We're about to expand soon, I hope, in the next couple of months, but we'll be expanding. So we're going to have even more offices because we have a waiting list for offices. And a secondary open space so I can actually have multiple events going on at the same time. So I can have class, and there can also be another class. Because we're about to be space restricted on that. So Soar Space is a great space. We have the best rates in town on copies. Our member rates are a nickel a page for black and white and a quarter a page for color.
Wow.
And our non-member rates are a dime a page for black and whites. And our members get their first 100 black and whites for free. Our non-member rates are a dime a page for black and white and 40 cents a page for color. So really just trying to like bridge the gap in our community, really. The other thing that we have with you guys, which is not entrepreneurship related, but we're entrepreneurial, so we're good at things, is we are the local navigator for Vermilion County for CEJA. CEJA stands for Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. It is an initiative that's statewide and law that was enacted in Illinois to make Illinois a location for the climate and energy sector. And so the way that the ecosystem was constructed by DCEO is that you have hubs who provide educational services and also help people deal with any barriers and provide barrier reduction services for people to get jobs in the climate sector. So we're still waiting on a hub to provide that training. There's also a Climate Works partner that provides trainings as well through pre-apprenticeship programs. There have been waiting lists for the Climate Works partner, but we're in conversation with them to actually bring their training to Danville proper. There's a Climate Works partner that covers this area, but the closest training for our area is in Savoy. Well, if a person has barriers, one of them being transportation, you use up a lot of dollars transporting people to Savoy, especially for classes that happen 3 times a week. So they're bringing the classes here. Great. So we actually have a meeting on this to continue the conversation about when this is going to start here tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. So we anticipate, I'm hoping by the summer, that we'll actually have classes here. We've already been recruiting people. Our job as navigator is to recruit participants. We are out in the streets, hitting the streets, recruiting participants. And so my team has been doing a phenomenal job on the recruitment side. We've already hit in 1 month, we've already hit our numbers for this quarter. We still have another month left. So we are, in terms of the number of people that we're supposed to be in front of, we're good on that. And as soon as we actually have a partner that we can send people to, we assume that they will have a waiting list, and we will be ready to hit the ground running as soon as they have a date. And they will actually start doing the training out of Soar space, because one of the things that they said was, okay, well, we can come to Danville, but we don't have space. And I was like, well, guess what? We have space, because I have a training space already. So I'm excited about that. So those are some of the things. I'm trying to think, is there anything else that I forgot?
How could there be? It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, we stay busy. I don't sleep.
I was just going to ask you when you find time to sleep.
Lately, I haven't been. It seems like I haven't been. But yeah, we got a lot going on. I got a wonderful team. Because I have a wonderful team, I think we've been able to really ramp up. There's a lot that, when you look at, one of the things that happens with entrepreneurs is that we don't take the time to stop and look at how far we've come or smell the roses ourselves. So when I look at where I was, my business was started in 2018, and at the time I was still an employee. I was working at Heister. And I was like, yeah, but I know I'm not going to be here. And I actually told them, I was like, and it was one of those instances where I could see 6 steps ahead. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm not going to be here, and these are the things that are going to happen. And I remember talking to our HR director, and he was like, how did you know this was going to happen? And I was just like, because I just knew. Mm-hmm. I knew that these things would happen. I can't tell you how I knew, I just knew. But I was basically plotting my transition. So I spent all of 2018 plotting my transition. 2019, I went full-time in the business, and it was just me at my one office. And I had 2 adjoining offices. I had a couch. I originally didn't even have that. I had a desk. I had a desk that didn't even have drawers. I bought the shell of the desk, and I bought the chair, because I was like, I can get the drawers later. I don't need to spend the money on that. Nobody needs to know that everything under the desk is just shoved under there.
Right.
So later I bought the drawers, and then I bought a couch, and I bought an armoire that I painted myself in my garage and brought down to the office and took the TV out my bedroom and put it in there to then present on. And then fast forward, it's like, and then I start having classes and stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, stuff just start happening. And I was like, I was renting space to have class. And then the landlord was like, well, I want to extend your lease. And I was like, nope, not unless you have this and this and this. And she says, oh, I might. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I was like, oh, yeah, we can do this. I can see how this could work. And we started off with, I don't know if you know this, because we actually have 2 adjoining spaces in Town Center. Well, it used to be Town Center, now the Riverfront Plaza. We had 1 space. Mm-hmm. which is the space where our classroom is, and then we had the 3 meeting rooms. And I said, okay, well, we have these 3 rooms, and I'll make this room will be a podcast room, this room will be a meeting room, this other room will be a meeting room. And then the law office next door closed, and then I contacted the landlord and said, I want that space because I need offices. So then we got offices. And then I was like, yeah, maybe commercial news might one day, I'll go that way. Because all of that used to be contiguous space back when it was Cell 1. And my mom used to work there, so it's kind of like surreal, like her life come full circle. So I'm like, and so now we're going into Cell 1. So commercial news, what used to be commercial news, we're going into that direction. So we'll have storage, we'll have 5 more offices. Maybe, I don't know if they'll all be offices, but 5 more spaces that could be offices, another open space. So, but in 2018, I was just an employee dreaming of working for myself because I was frustrated with things not changing and always being the person pushing the envelope. Now I'm still pushing the envelope in other places in other ways. So life is good.
Absolutely. Well, it's a wonderful story, and I mean, we could continue on here all day long and keep talking. And I definitely think we're going to have you back because
be happy to come back.
You got a lot more to say, I know, and some of your ideas are wonderful. So let's continue the conversation in the future. And Tricia, thank you very much for your time this morning. And yeah, something tells me that you're going to be in the middle of a lot of stuff in this community for a lot of time to come. So.
Hey, I am. I'll say probably so, mainly because, I grew up, and I said this during the candidates forum, I grew up under the premise of either you're going to be a part of the solution or you're going to be part of the problem. I can't see a problem and not feel obligated to participate in trying to solve it. So all of the problems that we have in our city, they're numerous. I want to be part of saying, hey, we made a difference. We saw the problem. At the end of the day, I just want to make a difference in people's lives. My personal life philosophy is I make people, places, and things better. So if it's not better because I was there, then I didn't do my job. So to me, this is my job, to make it better. And Danville is one of the places that I love, so I want to make it better.
Awesome.
It's awesome.
Just thank you.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Perfect way to end it. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
That was great.